what? What's happening?
Shrek 2 is just as good now as it was 20 years ago. The word classic is thrown around a lot these days, with many different films being designated as a modern day classic. And I think that title is very fitting for Shrek 2. The film has proven itself to have very comedic moments, scenes of big spectacle, a devilish villain, fantastic character writing, and a lasting cultural impact. And since Shrek 2 is being re-released in theaters, now is the perfect time to talk about one of the best DreamWorks films. Everyone knows Shrek as the funny animated movie. It stars two comedic actors, has a bunch of pop culture references, and some downright funny digs at Disney. Now what if I told you Shrek 2 does all of that, but better? Mike Myers and Eddie Murphy are both so good in this film. They really capture the characters so perfectly and have a bunch of memorable lines like,
"It's easy to see where Fiona gets her good looks from."
Look out, Shrek! He got a piece!
and Antonio Banderas as Puss in Boots really hams it up. He brings so much personality to this character and has his fair share of quips. In recent years, pop culture references have sort of been ruined by big studio films like the MCU movies. I mean, come on, isn't Spider-Man so quirky and relatable? He knows what Star Wars is. I give the references in Shrek 2 a little more credit because the filmmakers took the time to integrate them into this fairy tale world. Far Far Away is pretty much just Hollywood, complete with the Far Far Away sign, trashy billboards, and scammers on the sidewalk. And there's a bunch of other references like Farbucks or the Cops parody Nights, which to this day still makes me holler. Haha, Puss in Boots had catnip on him. Get it? It's the stinky green. And like the first Shrek movie, there's a ton of hilarious anti-Disney moments.
Welcome! Punch!
Like Fiona chucking the Little Mermaid back into the ocean, the villain of the film singing a very Disney-esque musical number, and really the whole existence of the fairy godmother is a big middle finger to the mouse. And she's maybe one of the best villains in the entire DreamWorks catalog. There's two ways to interpret her character. On the surface level, she's just the fairy godmother from Cinderella, but evil. And on that level, she still works as the film's villain. She's very manipulative, very threatening, and very fun to watch on screen. She's for sure one of the most magnetic DreamWorks villains. But if you dig a little deeper, she also works as an allegory for Disney as a brand. To the public and to her customers, the fairy godmother is a good figure who is all about spreading joy. But behind the scenes, she's a lot uglier. Her employees hate working for her greed knows no bounds, and she owns a business based on the selling of magic that isn't quite what it seems. Now, does that sound like anyone else you know? Claiming the fairy godmother is just the personification of Disney isn't exactly a new idea, but it gives the film a little more lasting charm because it was hating on Disney before hating on Disney became the cool thing to do. This was the time when Disney still had a ton of goodwill with everyone and was putting out ads like this.
We have our heading.
Here we go!
I know Disney has fallen off in recent years, but this is still very nostalgic. And for a studio that was built on hating Disney, this is for sure the best hating they've ever done. Shrek 2 also has a lot of amazing spectacle. Now when you think about DreamWorks and spectacle, you might think of Kung Fu Panda, or How to Train Your Dragon, or The Prince of Egypt. But this film has its own fun, action-packed scenes, like the fight with Puss in Boots, oh hey, an Alien reference, or the sequence where Shrek, Donkey, and Puss escape Fairy Godmother's factory, or the greatest scene in any DreamWorks film, maybe any film period.
Hit it!
The I Need a Hero sequence. This scene has been praised to death on this website, but I couldn't possibly talk about this film without mentioning it. Everything about this is exceptional. Jennifer Saunders' vocals are great. The stakes in this scene are really high, with Shrek maybe losing Fiona forever and Mungo's sacrifice. Rest in peace, King. And the incredible pacing between Shrek storming the castle and Fiona dancing with Charming. This is the height of the film and the height of the entire Shrek series. The one thing I will say is kind of weak with Shrek 2 is the soundtrack. This franchise using licensed music instead of traditional musical numbers is part of the DNA of Shrek. And the first film did a fantastic job of collecting these songs that are both really memorable and fit the tone of the scenes in which they're used. Like All Star, Bad Reputation, I'm on My Way, Hallelujah, and of course, I'm a Believer. But the soundtrack for Shrek 2 isn't as memorable, besides Accidentally in Love or Holding Out for a Hero, or Funky Town, but who could forget Funky Town? While the comedy, the anti-Disney subtext, and the spectacle are all top-notch, they're all just icing on the Shrek cake. What really makes Shrek 2 special is the central theme and the character stories that revolve around that theme. If I had to describe what this movie is about in one word, it would be Insecurity. Most of the characters in this film have stories that revolve around their insecurities. As soon as Shrek arrives at Far Far Away, he's bombarded with reminders that he's not who Fiona was supposed to marry. He's not welcomed by her parents. Her room is littered with references to this Prince Charming who was supposed to save her. And when Shrek goes through Fiona's diary, he sees how every day she was waiting for someone who's not him. And his insecurity about being an ogre grows to the point where he drinks the 3 a.m. Among Us potion and turns into this Prince Charming. Donkey is also affected by his own self-doubt. Throughout the film, he questions whether or not he's good enough to be Shrek's friend. He's constantly getting on Shrek's nerves in the beginning of the movie, then has a rivalry with Puss in the later half. He even drinks the Fortnite juice before Shrek can, to make sure it wasn't harmful or poisonous, willing to potentially die to prove the fact that he's a good friend. The king also has a story about his insecurity. He doesn't want his wife and everyone else to know that he's a frog, so he does evil things throughout the story because he's terrified of people finding out his secret. And these stories also make Fairy Godmother an even better of a villain because she manipulates both Shrek and King Harold through their own insecurities. She flat out tells Shrek that him being with Fiona doesn't make sense, and she leads him to stealing the potion and turning into a normal human. And she blackmailed King Harold into sending Fiona to the tower and giving her the love potion, all to put Prince Charming on the throne. Which, speaking of, Charming also has his own insecurities. He feels like less of a man because someone else fulfilled his destiny. And it's really exciting to watch these characters overcome their own self-doubts, and by extension overcome Fairy Godmother and her evil schemes, by Shrek realizing Fiona loves him for him, and it doesn't matter to her that he's not Prince Charming. Donkey realizes that he is Shrek's friend and doesn't have to try so hard to prove it, and King Harold realizes that the people who love him do so for who he is on the inside, and not who he is on the outside. The arcs these characters go on are very well written and relatable, and the theme of not letting your own self-doubt take control of what you think and what you do is a very wholesome message for both kids and adults, and that leads to the biggest reason this film holds up so well: its cultural impact. There are so many things from Shrek 2 that are still relevant today, even though the film is 20 years old. First of all, this film popularized the use of Holding Out for a Hero by Bonnie Tyler, and it's been used in a bunch of different movies and shows since then, although the song has sorta died now because of its less than stellar use in Shazam: Fury of the Gods. And yeah, that movie killed a lot of things. The song, Shazam as a main character at DC, Zachary Levi's career, etc. The film also gave us Puss in Boots, who especially with the release of The Last Wish has become a very popular character, and I would go as far as to say that he's my favorite from the Shrek universe and maybe all of DreamWorks. Shrek 2 has stood the test of time because of its effect on internet culture. There are so many memes that come from this movie. The film is referenced a whole bunch, and there's a bunch of DreamWorks and Shrek movie rankings out there, which, by the way, I don't think I'm ever going to do an independent Shrek movie ranking, so I'll just do a quick one here. Shrek the Third, Puss in Boots, Shrek Forever After, Shrek, Shrek 2, and Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Feel free to leave your own rankings down below. Shrek 2 is a bona fide classic. The film remains relentlessly funny, incredibly charming, and full of great character writing, and watching it in theaters again was a real treat, and I recommend you do the same. I also recommend you check out my review of Invincible Season 2, another masterpiece of animation, or check out this other video here that YouTube picked out just for you. Yeah, you should definitely click on one of those. Just click on one of them. Either one. You'll have a good time, I promise.